The Poet's Perspective podcast is brought to you by Urban Grind Coffee House. What better way than to start your day by grabbing life by the beans? Coffee beans, that is. Visit urbangrindatlanta.com to get coffee delivered right to your doorstep. And be sure to use the discount code POETRY to save 15% on your next pound of coffee. And if you'd like to be a part of the culture and represent the eclectic vibe and positive energy that Urban Grind has to offer, you can choose from our selection of brand new Urban Grind apparel. And if you're in the Atlanta area, make sure you visit Urban Grind for their selection of specialty coffees, sandwiches, and pastries while you get your studying done, working on that $1 million idea, or just meeting up with friends. Urban Grind Coffee House. Keep grinding. Yo, Papi
Peace, King.
Picasso.
What up? What up?
What's going on, sir?
Sure, well, my brother. I'm just trying to make sure I'm in the picture.
Yeah, you good? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Is that good?
Yeah, you good, man. How's everything?
Man, I'm blessed and highly favored on this side. I'm just, feeling like Muhammad Ali. Young,
Hey, man.
I'm ready. I hit hard. I'm in the best shape of my life.
That's what's up, man. I
I'm
love
sorry,
to hear
I'm
it.
sorry.
So let's kick it off like this, man. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, and then why don't you go ahead and kick a piece while you at it?
They call me Papi Picasso, Rembrandt Rico, Michelangelo de Maricon, but understand it's always power to our people. And I've watched as they tried to steal the power out our people. They can't level the playing ground, my brothers and sisters, because our power makes us paramount, not equal. My name is Papi Picasso, and that was a quick introduction as to what I do as my pastime, which is poetry. And I'm originally from Q4 in the Bronx, New York. I'm way too old to still be referencing my block like that, but I don't care because I love it.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. So let's go ahead and get into it, man. So I know I'm not sure where I officially met you, but I know that, I got on the spoken word scene kind of tentatively in about 2015, and it was like, but I wasn't really on it. I was performing at open mics here and there, but by that time, I think you was already pretty much known in the community. You was moving around and doing your thing. But I know you started
because 2015, I moved here in 2014.
Okay.
I've been in Atlanta for 5 going on 6 years. And, I shared periodically here and there prior to that. But when I got to Atlanta, I was like, yo, I don't know anybody. This is a good way for me to meet people. So my homegirl gave me the name Papi Picasso. So I started, because I was growing my hair, which is long now, but I was bald when I moved here. So I took the moniker and I was like, I remember the first time I put that shit on paper, Georgia Me was hosting Apache. And she goes, coming to the next pop. Is this shit real? Is a grown adult really using this word, calling themselves this? Well, Papi Picasso, let's see what he got. And I went up there and I rapped. And then, the Atlanta community in itself is so endearing. They really pull you in. It's very hard to be a spectator here. Like, they don't allow you to, like, it's like growing up and used to go into like a rap cipher and you was listening and the nigga started snapping on you and then you had to start rapping.
Got to. It's tight knit like that.
That's what it was like.
Yeah. That sound like something Georgia would say, for sure.
Oh, no, I got a relentless welcoming, but I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like, they love me now. You know what I mean? You can't get rid of me.
So let's start from the beginning, man. So you grew up in the Bronx. During I think I read the interview you did with what's the publication? Voyage ATL, I think.
Okay.
And it talks about you talked about growing up in the Bronx during the 80s. So I know during that time was like hip hop culture was like breakdancing and rapping. It was like the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So talk about that and how that kind of molded you. And were you thinking about poetry at that time?
It's funny to think about now where we end up in regards to the local culture of hip hop, because now it's a global culture. Back then, it was like what we did. And it's funny because even back then, you know, whether we went to like different friends' houses for parties and birthdays, etc., there was always that influence. Like, but you saw all the ingredients firsthand. So Puerto Ricans, I mean, hip hop was created by Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans. So when you go to like my parents' house, or I went to like one of my friends' houses, like Ajne, Shamari, and whatnot, and we started hearing the music, you hear those influences in hip hop. So it was popping. And then even going through like high school in the 90s, I used to break dance. Like I was known as a break dancer and a graffiti artist a lifetime ago. You know?
Okay.
And I was Manifest, and my graffiti name Manifest, because the song Lauryn Hill's verse on the song Manifest on the Fuji score blew my mind. So I started tagging that. Then, you know, I was to hang out in Castle Hill a lot. That was like when I was like in my rebel phase. So we did graffiti and breakdance and fought and smoked weed. You know what I mean? Like we did all the thing that kids did back then. And I remember my mother, like Zulu Nation was the move, was the shit, right?
Okay.
And I wanted to be down with Zulu, and my squad, they were in chapter 18. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna get down. So I get in trouble. My mother's like, yo, you could play ball, you could do anything you want in the block, but you can't go to the Puerto Rican parade. What I did, I went to the parade. Needless to say, I come home, my mother's like, wait, where's you at? I was like, oh, I went to go play ball and blah, blah, blah. She goes, really? Because the news, like ABC News had a feature about gangs marching in the Puerto Rican parade. And guess who we saw marching? My lucky ass. Needless to say, I didn't go back outside for a while. Sorry, Chip Chase, Rob, and all my friends.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. So when did poetry come into play?
My boy, Big U, my boy Eugene, came to school one day. We was in 10th grade, and he had T-O-N-Y. Whatchamacallit? You know,
is that the Noriega joint?
Noriega. He had that out.
Yeah.
And he was like, yo, listen to this. And I listened. I was like, oh, mind blown. You know what I mean? Because we was all familiar with the Jay-Z, the Nas, and the Biggie and all that. Like, that was always like the Kings. But that Queens dialect and the neighborhood where he's from is a lot like the neighborhood where I'm from. Left Rack and Co-op City kind of look alike. So I was like, yo, we just started writing that day in class. We didn't do no Spanish work whatsoever. So we write, you know what I'm saying? We write, we spit, and then I started liking stringing those words together, and eventually I became almost like the scribe on my block. Like I had rappers from my block, but whenever something happened outside, like there was a rumble, whatever, two people got in an argument, I would write about it, detailing it like a story, sort of like Nas would do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was like my energy, and then I joined the Air Force, and I would write about what was going on in basic training, and all of my like people in my flight, they'll be like, yo, let me hear that. So I kind of like got known for rapping, but I couldn't rap on beat for shit, so it was always a cappella anyway.
Okay.
You know
so at what point was it a point where you were like, okay, this is not really rap, it's more poetry?
I got
or did it just happen?
Like most great moments in transition in a man's life are due to a woman putting the pressure and putting her foot in his ass. So I used to freestyle with my homegirl Megan all the time, and she was like, yo, why are you always talking gangster when you have a top secret security clearance and you're in the Air Force? You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, that's a good point. And she was like, you know what? I'm going to give you topics to spit about, and I want you to write to them. And then during that same time frame, she was in college. She went to Hampton University. So she's putting me on to everything she's learning about the Harlem Renaissance and Black history. So I'm right next to an HBCU, and I'm writing with purpose now because everything has to be based upon a concept. So eventually,
Yeah, we good.
I hate when they do that. But anyway, so boom, we over here. You gonna go through all of them? My bad. That's hilarious. But anyway, So yeah, she's putting me on all of this, and I'm just like starting to like really digest it all. And I'm like, wow, like look at all this beauty that America's holding. And right at that time frame, my homegirl Nigeria was like, yo, I want you to do a African American History Month or Black History Month show. And I was like, she's like, you got a piece that you wrote? I said, yeah, I got something. And then it just all slowed down, and you started finding your tonage and your voice. And then I realized that it's always been poetry.
Okay. Okay. So talk about, actually, you mentioned something. So you're Puerto Rican, correct?
Yeah.
So does that, the Puerto Ricans plight in America and Black people's plight in America, do those intersect to you? Because when I hear you spit, it's still like the same stuff. Like if I was to spit like about like the struggle, it would sound very similar to something that you were right, I feel like. So
they're indicative of each other.
Okay.
But it's one way, not the other. So
Puerto Rican
culture is indicative of Black culture. Black culture is not indicative of Puerto Rican culture. What do I mean by that? I mean, as a Puerto Rican, you have roots in Africa. There's religion in Puerto Rico and colorism issues in Puerto Rico, and all which started and still has its foothold in West African culture, right?
Right.
So that's one thing that I was always taught to understand. Like my godfather is the foremost collector of slave artifacts from Puerto Rico. So I got, at a very young age, I got to feel what slave shackles felt like on a grown man hand. And that was excavated in Puerto Rico. So again, Puerto Rican culture it's not Puerto Rican culture without Black culture. However, it's like we always got to understand who's the parent. The motherland is the parent.
Okay.
America get it twisted that America's the parent, because that's American exceptionalism at its finest.
Okay.
So when I reference myself as Black, I'm not talking about American Black. I'm talking about my culture as well as yours comes from the motherland.
Got you.
Because Haiti, Dominican Republic,
Brazil,
all the Caribbean islands, you see nothing but people that look like you, that look like me, that look darker than either one of us. So we have to be mindful of what colonialism has done to our narrow understanding of the modern Black man. Got you.
So, okay, so regarding that, on that same topic, would you consider yourself Black or a Puerto Rican poet, or just a poet? And I ask that because a lot of times we feel like as poets, like we have to represent our tribe to a certain extent.
I'm like,
speak for that.
Again, like I'm not, where you from originally?
Originally, like
where'd you go to high school at? Where'd you go to high school?
Oh, Tennessee. I'm originally from Tennessee. Oh yeah, I'm country.
So Tennessee, I'm pretty sure doesn't have a big Puerto Rican population.
No, right? Not at all.
So I look at it the same way as, the meat is the man. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So we're both Black. I just see mine's a little different.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Y'all Texas barbecue, we're Puerto Rican mojito. But it's still the same. It's still the same. You know what I mean? It's still the same.
I feel that. So so you go to the Air Force. Are you still writing during that time?
Oh, feverishly.
Okay. More than ever,
like, yo,
would you say?
I wrote so much in the Air Force that I got in trouble for it, and my supervisor made me write a script to back up all the systems that I worked on in a poem, and I did that shit and it worked.
That's actually pretty tight. But I think at one point you got deployed somewhere.
Yeah, I was in Korea for a year.
Okay, so what was that experience like?
Ooh, Korea is that's party town. Like it's nonstop out there. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
But at the same token, I was running away from a bad reputation in Virginia in the military. So when I got out there, I changed it. I got my associate's degree in a year. I got Airman of the Quarter for the entire Pacific Air Force. And then I won a talent show by doing 2 poems. If Heaven Was a Mile Away, inspired by Nas. And then it was my version of the I Have a Dream speech. So, you know what I mean? Like, I spoke to the soul of the times. And that was like in 2003. And that really gave me like the courage and confidence I needed to call myself a poet. Before that, I just wrote.
And so at this time, are you comfortable performing like in front of people and things like that at this point?
Oh yeah, I was fearless. Like, I was young and fearless. I was 23 years old, and I didn't care what anybody's opinion was.
Okay, so that's
now I'm
important.
40 and insecure.
That's important. That's important. So so part of one of the biggest things about being a poet, actually not even being a poet, I think just being an artist is when we go through struggle and we go through pain, you know, we have our outlets, and that kind of fuels a lot of our art sometimes. So so you get back, you come back to the States, and at some point you hit a bit of depression. Is that correct?
Very much so, yes, sir.
Talk about that and what impact it played on your art.
Had a series of situations happen. You know, I got fired from work, lost my security clearance that they convinced you to be dependent upon. I got divorced. My sister died. There was like just a series of things, and it's me and my sister. There's only two of us. So rest in peace, Tiana Nadine Reyes. I love you, been shown till we meet again. And my way of coping would be to drink and write. And then eventually I realized that the writing part was healthy, the drinking part was poison. So I pulled myself out of that stupor of just, you know, that pity party I was throwing for myself. And I decided to start applying, you know, lessons to those experiences. And I think that's where my value as a poet comes in.
So coming out of that depression, was writing one of the things that, or just doing spoken word in general, was that one of the things that kind of helped you get through it?
Yeah, performing, I wasn't really performing like that.
Okay.
Like, I probably performed a handful of times a year. It wasn't even like I was a poet.
Okay.
They might have known me at the spots because I liked them, but I wasn't a poet per se. I was literally writing every day and keeping it to myself.
Okay. So so it comes full circle. So you come to the where we started. You come to Atlanta and you get introduced to the poetry community. Where's the first place you went to perform? Where was that? Where you were talking about Georgia?
Wild guess, the first place I performed.
Apache.
Wrong.
Urban Grind.
Right here in the garden.
No, you like the third or fourth poet I've had on here that said that the first place they performed is Urban Grind.
Shout out to El Uno. He's a poet in Atlanta as well. He brought me out, and we were like, you know, we grew up together. We both played ball in the same neighborhood. So he was like, yo, when you get out here, we're going to hit the poetry scene. I was like, bet. And lo and behold, when I got out here, I still had a 30-foot U-Haul in the back of what's the big joint, the hotel in by Lennox Mall.
Right there.
Right by the food court and whatnot. That big whatchamacallit? Not the Four Seasons, I forgot, whatever it is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I got a 30-foot moving truck straight from Baltimore. He's like, yo, come on, we going out. And we went to Urban Grind, and I got to perform a piece. Wow, like that's crazy. That seems like another life ago itself.
That is crazy. So at that point, how serious were you taking poetry? Were you like, you know, this is more than a hobby?
When I got here, I had the intention. I said, oh, I'm gonna become a part of the fabric. My goal was to become a part of the fabric. I ain't say I'm gonna take anything over. I was like, yo, I want to see what the community's hitting for, and volunteer my time. And also, a great way to do that is by getting engaged with like-minded people. And typically, poetry venues could introduce you to people of every walk of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you get entrenched into the poetry scene. Talk about your writing process a little bit. Talk about the balance between performing and working on your actual performance piece and then writing. Because I see that you write a lot of pieces on Instagram, and they look good. Your pieces look good, like you can perform it, and then they look good on paper. Like I feel like I got pieces. They look like shit on paper, but I can perform it and bring it to life. So talk about like the balance between working on your performance and working on the writing.
Well, I humbly thank you for that amazing compliment. I don't know. You never know what is gonna stick when you're a poet or writes. There's some what I do is I typically lean on the poems that write me.
Okay.
Like
elaborate on that.
I get in trouble with my girl and I write her a love poem about why I don't write love poems to apologize. That poem was a direct response to something that happened and it came out in 10, 15 minutes. Whereas when there's like typically a concept, I'm writing it and trying to figure out exactly what I'm trying to say. So sometimes you actually feel like a conduit for a greater power. And then sometimes you're just challenging your own creativity. So I like to challenge my creativity because I like to make sure I still got it, you know what I mean? But there's nothing like performing a piece that you mean from your soul. So when I say nothing matters until all you have left is hope as a father, I mean that shit because I remember when my son was in the hospital. So there's like this barrier that you can't get in like virtual performances. It's the literal exchange of energy. I've seen Red Storm perform and stare at somebody, and I watched them have to move in their seat because his look was so intense. You felt tension there. And I remember paying attention to that in Apache when Apache was at its heyday, and we was there every Sunday. And I said, you know what? Instead of screaming on the crowd, instead of like barking on them and, you know, almost like you're giving a monologue, try to truly connect. Lower your tone, look at the people. You know, if there's somebody that you could tell is receiving and is downloading, stay there for a little bit. You feel me? Like it's the most meaningful conversation in which you can't hear what they're saying back.
Facts, and really? I can see that when you perform it because your style is very conversational. Like you can digest it. You know what I'm saying? So I see that's intentional right there.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely like a lesson poet.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I like people that could like dude yesterday that was able to chop up all of those black movies.
Yeah.
And make it make sense. Like that's cool. That's dope. I love that. I can't write like that though. I don't. Or when I tried, it wasn't good to me. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So when I go through an event and I share like poems, I'm sharing a part of me. I got a poem called "I Am a Man." It's a true testimony, and I wrote that when like the toxic masculinity wave started, and I just became a single father, and people had no idea what kind of man I was going to be. So I felt like I had to let them know. And after I let them know, when I perform it, it is a conversation. Because I'm letting you know, like this, I'm not screaming on you. I'm just notifying you of what's really good.
Right. And I can see that. I think you communicated that very well because that's how I see your brand. As I see it as somebody that's, you know, it's conversational. Like you said, you can learn something from it. But another piece that you touched on, that's also what I feel like is part of your brand, at least, is the fatherhood aspect. Like every time I see you posting, I see you going to events with your kids. Like I think that's one of the most beautiful things. I don't have kids yet. You know, that's one of the next moves. So, you know, that's very inspirational for me. You know what I'm saying? And I know that like the toxic masculinity thing is tough because I mean, I don't even like saying toxic masculinity because like masculinity itself is not toxic, but there are assholes out here, and I understand that. So talk about the role that fatherhood has played in your poetry.
There's certain lines in your life that there's the before this happened and then the after it happened. And one of those moments was when I became a father. I was fundamentally changed forever. I was never going to, and even though sometimes I needed alignment and I needed to straighten up and fly right and remember that I am somebody's father, I am an example, and they are looking to me. And I can't be making frivolous decisions that impact my ability to be consistent and provide. So right after that happened, all I did was apply those years of experience in writing and exposure to then writing about them. And it's easy to write about them because like a boy and a girl is like pride and joy as a man.
Okay.
Like as a man, nobody's gonna make you more proud than your baby boy. Like he's your namesake. He might be a junior. Like if he's whatever he's good at, you're gonna yell it at the mountaintop. Swear to God, right? So, and not that you're not proud of your daughter, and not that your son doesn't bring you joy,
Different.
but it's a different type of love.
Okay.
When your daughter comes, nobody makes a man happier than baby girl. Like, she is all encompassing. Like, this is your opportunity to be the man that you always wanted to be, but all those bad decisions and pressures and traits and indoctrinations made you be assholes. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
So now you got this beautiful baby girl and you're like, yo, I'm going to protect her from all of the worst things that I've ever done, but I'm also going to be what I want her to look for.
Okay. Yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy right there.
I'll tell you this too, pardon me. It's harder to write about your daughter than your son. Because
really?
As a man, it's very easy to write about your pride. If you think about what hip hop is, it's nothing but prideful men beating their chest about all the things they achieved and obtained, right?
That's true. That's true. I never thought of it that way.
MCs write about their vulnerabilities.
Nah,
your daughter is your biggest vulnerability.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. So when your kids see you perform, what do they think? Is it just like, oh, daddy's doing another poem, or are they pretty interested in it?
Nah, they don't give a fuck. I think I might be starting to rub off on them because, like, I hosted a kids poetry workshop last year during the pandemic, and then like they always write a poem here and there and be like, "Yo, Dad, listen." I think not so much when I perform, I don't see nothing in their eyes, but they get excited when like somebody recognizes me.
Okay.
Like we're at the grocery store boarding a plane and somebody's like, "Hey, you're that poet guy, right?" And then they're like, "Yo, you're famous." And I'm like, "Yo, but I'm more famous in the house, right? Like I'm still cool." Stop trying to play.
But most poets that I've talked to on here that are fathers, that's how it is. Like, I mean, they could write the greatest shit, but their kids are like, it's okay. So I feel like
the people closest to you care least about the things that make you great per se.
That is all the facts. That's
not what they're there for. You know what I
mean? Yeah. And that's fair. And that's fair to their credit.
I told my mother every time I get like an accomplishment, I'm like, "Ma, guess what I did?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's cool." Like, but what do you want for dinner?
Right. So the book, A Son with No Father is a book with no author.
Yeah.
Talk about the book a little bit. What inspired it? How it came to be.
I used to live in Baltimore. Shout out to all the Baltimore poets I heard on here and see on here also. I was in Baltimore and I'm with my barber Six, and he says I watched him give father advice to 4 kids before it was my turn. I finally get in the chair and I was like, "Yo, I noticed that." And he's like, "Yeah, none of them have fathers. They're all locked up."
Damn.
And I just sat back and I just looked at him. I was like, a son with no father is like a book with no author. A main character developed by his peers and his barber. You know how I tell you sometimes it writes like you're the conduit?
Yeah.
That was one of those moments. That was a download straight from me and whoever's up there. And the line came to me immediately, and I said it to him, and he leaned back with the ugly face and was like, that deserves more. He said, write that poem. So I wrote the poem. And people were like pushing me. You should put out a book. You should put out a poetry book. But I'm a poet, and I don't like poetry books, just to be honest. You know what I mean? So, like, I just don't.
Okay.
I like to hear it. I got to see how I feel a little bit more.
I feel
so
that.
I decided if I'm going to write something, I have to write about something that I'm truly passionate about, one. And then two, I want to make it a story because the story will keep people engaged. So 48 Laws of Power is my favorite book. It's broken, every chapter is broken up into 3 parts. So I said, okay, I'm going to share a narrative, a lesson I was hoping to impart based on the subject matter, and then the poem that inspired. So the book's broken down into 8 subjects, and every subject has those 3 parts into each chapter. So if you're a story person, just read the narration and the exchange between he and I. If you're into logic and the science of things, listen to the lessons I was hoping to impart onto him and why. And if you're into art, look at the actual artwork that Charlie Palmer, fine artist, did, and also read the poetry. So there's something to feed every dimension. You feel me?
Okay. Okay. So did you have all that when you set out to write it, or was that something that came about as you were going through the process?
Oh, thank you, Chanel. She put the site up there. You could pin that. You could pin that website right there at the bottom. Word up. Get your book right there. But when I started writing, honestly, I probably had 3 to 4 subjects. And as you're writing it, and you're doing your brain dumps and you're getting rid of the parts you don't need and you're keeping the parts you do need, you start realizing that other subjects deserve to still be there. You feel me? So
yeah, gotcha.
As I'm writing it and Freddie Gray happens and I'm living in Baltimore and I was just in Gilmore Homes doing a community event there, then I find it now it's got national exposure and people are coming in from all over the country. I was like, oh, I have to address this. How am I going to address race to my son? And we were walking out of a bank in downtown Baltimore. And I remember there was this building, and in front of each window in bright red paint was painted, "America, stop killing black men." And my son looked at it and stopped, and he was able to read, and he was like, "Daddy, why do they want to kill us?"
Mm.
So that hit me with 2 things. One, the simplification of me as a Puerto Rican not being black by American standards, because he felt the energy. Why do they want to kill us, Dad? To him, I'm a black man, and he's a black boy to the rest of the world. And then the second thing was, how real do I keep it at this moment? Do I crush his little fragile spirit and tell him, well, historically, officer came from overseer that used to round up slaves, and America has all these sociological issues when you get pulled over and go into the whole spiel? Or do I placate him and just not address it with the level of urgency it actually deserves? So I talk about wrestling with that in the book. Like, that was a real experience.
Mm. Damn. That's heavy. That's heavy. And so if I'm not mistaken, it comes with a workbook as well, right? Or does it
Yes,
come with,
sir.
but it's like a part 2, if you will.
No, it's a workbook. So
okay.
What I did was I got with a clinical child psychologist and a speech pathologist, and we sat down and I said, this is the book. This is the way it's structured. I want to create a workbook that can help facilitate communication between parent and child. So what we did was we used Maslow's hierarchy of needs and being able to see where your child is at developmentally. And then we picked specific questions for the parent to ask the child and questions for the child to ask the parent to create that conversation. And what's even doper than just creating the conversation is that you don't have to be the bad guy as the parent. You're not prying anymore. All you're doing is using the book itself and our scenarios as a backdrop.
Okay.
So have you
Okay.
ever been bullied in the school like what happened with MJ? So now you understand that at some point MJ had to make the decision of how he wanted to handle the bully.
Mm.
Are the
Okay.
kids in your school that get bullied? And then now you're starting to understand what their day-to-day life is like, the parts that you aren't privy to. And then you get to open up and share scenarios in which you were potentially bullied or the bully. Because a lot of people that bully got bullied. So it's one of those vicious cycles that we deal with in life. You know what I mean?
Hey, that's dope, man. So, okay, so this ain't some shit you just put together, is what you saying. This is some real thought about, very methodical, very psychological type of stuff.
From conception to delivering the book took a total of 8 years.
Wow.
So while you're reading it, you're gonna realize that MJ's growing up as you're reading the book.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because the book actually starts with the youth chapter and just talking about how fragile it is, how it goes in a heartbeat. And next thing you know, you're 40 years old with a kid going to high school.
Wow.
Feel me?
Wow.
So because it took that long to write, I think my writing style got better because I started understanding how to write a book, as well as its sincerity, because I wrote most of those parts when those feelings were still raw. When you're trying to write outside of the emotion, it's like trying to catch a flame in the wind. Like it'll go out, and now you can only remember what you were intending to say instead of it coming from the raw emotion.
Got you. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, so Papi Picasso, tell me this. If there is one message that you would want to get across in all of your poetry, if there's one singular message you would want to get across, what would that one message be?
One message. There's a couple of messages that I could think of that come straight to mind.
Then go ahead and lay them out.
One would be a thermostat, not a thermometer. That means I've seen too many people claim to be victims of their environment when they don't realize they're actually changing it with their actions. Recognize that. There's a very big difference between accountability and responsibility. That's the second message.
Elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, you could be accountable for something you're not responsible for. We're accountable every day for our well-being in our lives in America as Black men. We're not responsible for the conditions. Our vote only goes but so far. So that's two. I would say the third, and I'll leave it off at this. Love isn't definite. There isn't even definite. Love is energy. It's just our flesh that is delicate.
Hey, I think
that's for everybody that ever lost a loved one. That'll allow you to understand that they're not really gone. As long as you're here, their energy's still here. They just transition into a different energy.
Spit those lines one more time for me, please, sir.
Love isn't definite. There isn't even death in it. Love is an energy. It's just our flesh that is delicate.
Hey, man, that's heavy, man. That sounds like a period right there to me. That sounds like a damn exclamation mark to me. So, Papi Picasso, man, I appreciate you coming on here, sharing your journey, man. I could pick your brain all night. There's some good shit, man. You taught me some things culturally, so I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on here and gracing the platform. Anything else you want to tell the people?
I want to let y'all know that this book is a true labor of love, and if you are a parent or know a parent to any child that has that is fatherless, or you want to gift a great fatherhood's gift, holla at my book at www.papipicasso.com/book. It's called The Son with No Father is a Book with No Author. And can I leave them with a poem?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, yo, A Son with No Father is a Book with No Author. A main character that's developed by his peers and his barber. Lost, wondering if his features reflect that of the artist, but he can't tell because tears blurry his vision that chased his birthday cake when he just needed to be watered. A son with no father is a plant with no light, a seed trying desperately to bud with all of its might, hoping to bloom in spite of the gloom that he faces every night when he just needed you there, king, to read him a sweet lullaby. A son with no father is a player with no coach, a slave with no hope, a burning desire for freedom, but the longing for his daddy only keeps him dangling from that rope when he just needed you there to keep your promises. A son with no father is left with women that eat their young, forced to feed on that boy's masculinity until he fucks around and thinks he's one of them. Lost in pop culture, trying to discover his identity with no place to learn it from when he just needed you there, king, to set the example. You see, he needed that balance. That boy needs both of his parents. He did nothing to deserve being abandoned and would rather walk in his father's shadow. But in the man's absence, it's the little boy that has to be the one to cast it. His imagination holds the graphic of the perfect dad captured, a slave to an image that will never be mastered. There is no hands to craft it. There's no magic in rabbits. There's no one to show him how to swing the bat at baseball practice. Remember, you keep that back elbow up and keep your eye on the ball. There's no one to show him how to throw his hands so he doesn't get his ass kicked. You always keep your guard up, tuck your chin, and you punch across the middle. There's no one to point out a good woman or the definition of what a good ass set is. Now for this, I would like to take a walk with you. No one to share an adventure in all things that are man-ish. Mommy can try her very best, but she can't be all the things that a man is. Her role is just as important to provide him with balance and order. But a son with no father is haunted by the thoughts of being fostered, hoping that he could protect his future son and daughter from all of the lessons that your absence taught him. Let me ask you, have you ever tried to read a book that's missing an introduction? No preface to prepare that youngin' for what's coming. Yet the numbing effects of your absence creates a heartless dummy that walks around town with that 4 pound and finds everything funny. Now I don't think you do, money, because you fail to realize that a son with no father is much, much, much more than a book with no author or a boy with no dad. He is the Immaculate Conception. I call that little boy a young God because he birthed himself. You was just a sperm donor. Painfully obvious that you are no man. A son with no father is looking for the words to complete his story in the absence of its author.
Hey, A Son with No Father is a book with no author. Make sure y'all cop that. Papi Picasso, appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Make sure y'all cop that. Hey, I appreciate it, man.
Judge. Yo, have a good one, my brother. God bless you, and you killed it last night.
Hey, appreciate it, man. You too, man. You too, always. Looking forward to seeing you again out here, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
Peace.